Hello everyone, and welcome back to Soccer Unboxing. So welcome to a long overdue figure review of a figure that has been released like months ago, and I've just been waiting for the good opportunity to unbox her. Again, it's a very massive figure and I'm just trying to find, the spot for her, but I really want to unbox her just to have her on display in my collection. So without further ado, let us get into the figure I'll be reviewing for you all today. And yes, today I have this absolutely massive box. This is of course the Hatsunemiku 1/7 scale digital stars 2022 version by Hobby Stock. So this is my first figure from this manufacturer and I just fell in love with this design. In terms of the digital star Mikus, this one probably has to be my favorite so far. Yeah, very pricey figure, very massive figure, but I just, absolutely amazing looking character design for Miku. So yes, finally I get to unbox her. She was released months ago. So yeah, before we get into unboxing the figure, let us get into some general info about her. So now going into some general information about this figure. So this figure was manufactured by Hobby Stock, and originally she was supposed to have a December 2023 release date, but ended up releasing in February of 2024. Going into the dimensions of this figure, so she is a 1/7 scale, measuring roughly 18.33 inches in height and about 15.6 inches in width. So now we're going to where I bought this figure from. So originally I did have her pre-order off of Nin Game. However, when the time came when she finally released and a lot of people were getting their orders shipped from that website, I didn't get a shipping notification and I waited quite a while until I finally emailed them asking, okay, where is my order? And it turns out they had a limited stock of this figure and they were waiting to get more. And this was at a time where I didn't have a credit card to pay for my 18 plus figures and there were some coming up. So I just decided to cancel her, get a refund from there, and I ended up ordering her off of AmiAmi. So yes, on AmiAmi she was 51,980 yen. The shipping fee, I used EMS, was 16,540 yen for a grand total of 68,520 yen. So yes, very pricey, and again, I wanted to get this figure right away, so I just sucked it up and paid the EMS shipping cost. And also, I do apologize, but I do not have the other shipping costs to the United States. I didn't take a screenshot of it, because I would assume it would have been on the My Figure Collection page. However, no one commented with US shipping prices, so I'll actually show up on screen to France and Switzerland, or I guess it could be Europe in general, the shipping costs. But yeah, this figure was no joke in terms of the shipping costs. DHL, of course, is crazy, and again, Surface, cheap, but I just didn't want to wait for the figure. And lastly, for the box size for this figure, she came in an AmiAmi size 160 box. So yeah, here she is, the figure box itself, very massive. I really like the design overall, even though it's obviously super large, and it has the original artwork. So yes, I again really love the way that this Miku looks. Yeah, so let's just get into opening her up. So yes, now we have her in the blister packaging. I have to say that this Miku is definitely a lot bigger than I thought it was gonna be. I always think that figures are gonna be like, a little smaller, but then I get surprised by this. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to go through, so let's get her out of the blister packaging. So yes, let's start off with the base right here. I'm gonna go through these one at a time. So yeah, very pretty. So I have heard some issues about this figure, unfortunately. like some parts being broken, and yeah. So first we have here, this is not supposed to be detached from the figure. Yeah, so I've heard issues that parts like this little stereo box, they came off during shipping. Thankfully, it's a pretty clean fix. It does have a peg at the bottom, so I'm just gonna go and super glue that in the future. I could just leave it as is, really, but I would like it to be secure. The other thing I think is these like wires that are throughout the figure. They're supposed to be, I think, plugged into some of these little stereos, and they're not. So yeah. So just be wary about that, but thankfully it's nothing is shattered or anything, so I can easily fix it. And now looking at the figure, I'm guessing that these wires are supposed to be like haphazardly just not attached to anything. I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of wish they were just like plugged into something, just to make it like look a little bit more neater instead of the way they look. So yeah. The instructions, yeah, it really doesn't say on the instructions if it's supposed to be attached to anything, so yeah. So far though, the base in terms of coloring and shading, I think it looks great. So yes, I ended up super gluing that one piece back onto the base. Thankfully, you know, it feels pretty secure, and the super glue I use is pretty fast drying, so let's get into the first step of the figure, which is getting Miku out and just placing her on top of all of this. And here she is, very massive Miku, a lot bigger again than I thought she was gonna be. And again, the sculpt work I think is excellent. This design is just so cool. I don't know, something about it just really stands out, and obviously with a massive base like this, it definitely adds to that feeling. Thankfully, it looks like everything is good. I don't notice anything in terms of paint or sculpt-wise that looks off. Yeah, from first glances, I think it looks fantastic so far. And now we're gonna put her on the base, which I've heard some people had issues with because the little pegs, metal pegs, they're kind of short, and that makes me nervous. I'm not gonna display this on the top shelf or anything, just in case. But yeah, let's put her on. I got her facing the wrong way, but so far looks pretty nice. I'm doing the little wobble test. Yeah, she just kind of wobble a little bit. In this case, usually I did complain in the past that some metal pegs just feel way too long, and it's just a complete pain to just then pull the figure out in the future off the peg, because yeah, I just feel like sometimes there's like just too tight of a fit on metal pegs. Maybe for these, I would have liked the peg to be a little bit longer just for the extra security. Thankfully, mine feels pretty secure. Again, I am wobbling it a little bit, but for the most part, it does feel quite secure. After that, we do have the microphone that I have to get out. So yeah. Then, alright, so next up, we have, of course, her microphone. It does come in like 3 separate pieces. We have this very hot pink cord, we have the little microphone itself, and then we have the little stand. Pretty simple. There's not really that much shading to these. Again, pretty simple. I do like how this little hot pink cord just have this very interesting little end piece right here. So yeah. First, it is telling us just to simply just put the microphone and cord together, which should be pretty simple. Alright, so I finally got the microphone on the cord. It was a little bit tricky because it's not like a full circle peg. It's like a 1/3 circle, like the end is like flat. So yeah, I'll show some b-roll of this with like a reference to how it should look at certain angles. But yeah, a little bit tricky, that's why I ended up having to do it off camera, because I couldn't even see the inside of the hole. And then also I decided just to take out the flag itself because it is a part of this step. So yeah, very massive. It does have some pretty cool shading on the inside with the pink part. The bag is just, you know, a black, not like black, but like a little bit of a lighter black, and then Miku's other hand is attached here. So yeah. I also forgot to mention the microphone stand, which I probably have to put in first into this. So yeah, let's do that first. Yeah, here's the... You probably can see because I'm okay. That's a little better. But yeah, the stand's in. Again, it's another half peg, which I don't know why they decided to do a half peg. I wish it was just like a full circle to make it a little easier to put in. And then we have the microphone that goes at the top. Yeah, just gonna go right up here, right at the... I'm doing such a bad job at this, but yeah, at the very top right here. Alright, now I have the whole thing set up. That was a little bit easier to put the microphone in. So yeah, here is the whole thing. I'll show it up probably up close. Yeah, the whole thing put together, and now it's just a matter of attaching Miku's arm onto this whole thing over here. So yes, now we have the whole thing assembled with the microphone and the cord on the flag. Now, I had to do like 2 takes beforehand with this, but her hand does rotate and it does move up and down the microphone stand. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't think in the instructions it tells you, again, I can't read Japanese, maybe it does. But yeah, so the hand does swivel and it does move up and down, so it's gonna make it a little bit more easier to put it in her hand, which is on just this back sleeve. Okay, so let me see if I can just try this out again. Okay, so I managed to get the hand in a little bit of a tight fit, and I kind of have to hold her up in the back a little bit because this thing is gonna just collapse. And now we have the last thing, if I can reach it, which is the giant support pole, which just simply goes into the back. I'll also just take the plastic off. So yeah, now we have the last step, which should be the easiest, which is just the support pole that just goes straight into the back of this figure. And it does, yeah. And it does have this little support, so yeah. You're definitely gonna need this. And I apologize for the creaking, I'm just trying to hold this up as I do it. So yeah, now we're gonna put in the support pole for the figure. So here she is, just all assembled. I'm not gonna even show the support rod for reasons I'll get into. It's pretty simple. You just stick it in the back and you hook it up to the flag. I'll show it, of course, in the assembly portion, but this figure almost ended up in disaster off screen. My camera was still recording. I thought I'd turn it off, but I might have the footage of the figure just completely collapsing in on me. Her pigtail just scraped the flag, of course. Oh my god. Oh, God, you're fucking kidding me. Because this freaking handpiece in the back was quite frustrating. It's a very tight fit, and pulling it out, I definitely recommend just getting plastic, like around her pigtail up here and all that, because I ended up pulling it and it just flung out. Miku herself almost just collapsed to the floor over here, because again, these are very short pegs, and yeah, with that amount of force, it just knocked the figure over. Thankfully she didn't hit the floor, and I'm just a little bit pissed and like devastated. So yeah, in the, figure overview portion, I did end up getting some of the paint from the flag onto her hair in like two places up here. I'm just baffled at this point, and also a little bit on the flag. Thankfully, you can't notice it unless you look up close. Even with like the hair, thankfully it's just in the back. And then her pigtail, like all the way over here, I scraped the bottom up against my thing because of how she fell. And when it is, it's just really hard to pull the hand out if you are disassembling this figure. I am going to try and touch up those little areas, at least on her hair. The flag, thankfully, again, because of the color of Miku's hair compared to the color of this flag, it's not really showing up, but I did manage to like rub a little bit of it off, but I am devastated. I'm kind of pissed. I'm smiling like it's okay, it'll be fine, but yeah. So yeah, if you've seen the b-roll that I showed that the paintwork in those areas that it was definitely, you know, my fault. The paintwork when it came out of the box is like great. So yeah, that's just something to be careful with. So yeah, that was definitely the trickiest part to assemble. I was not the biggest fan of it. So yeah, but other than that, at a distance, she looks great. So yeah, I really worked up a sweat with this figure. So yeah, let us get into that, you know, the box b-roll and the assembly proportion of this figure. So going into b-roll of the box, so yes, massive figure, very massive box, it almost just goes off my little table, but for how big this box is, I do like the design overall. You have some images of the figure on there, but it mostly consists of the original illustration, which, I mean, goes pretty hard. So yeah, I really just love the original illustration that this figure is based off of. And yeah, even for the size, I think the quality of the box is pretty nice, even though it didn't really protect the figure, because again, I got that broken little stereo box, unfortunately, but thankfully, other than that, Miku herself was perfectly fine, and the rest of the base as well was pretty intact. So yeah, I'm just trying my best to get some decent close-ups of this box. Still have to find a spot to actually store the box, because it's still in my room as of July of 2024, so I gotta figure that out. But yeah, overall, I'd say for how big it is, it's a pretty solid box. Now we're going into the assembly for this figure, so just one page, but I had some hiccups towards the end, as you guys know, so we'll get into that much later on. So we're starting off with the 2 foot pegs on the base. Again, I just wish that these metal rods were maybe a little bit thicker to kind of keep Miku maybe a little bit more secure, or just a little bit longer. And we have the main event, Miku herself. The sculpt work and the paint job are just flawless on this figure. Hobby Stock did a fantastic job with the shading and the details on her, from her boots to her outfit. Really no paint defects or seam lines on the actual sculpt to be noted. It's just a very gorgeous Miku design and overall very fantastic outcome. And now we just put her on the base. Definitely push this in all the way and make sure it's secure. And I really wouldn't recommend putting this figure in a spot that you're going to bump into a lot, just so she doesn't have the possibility of toppling over. I feel like mine is pretty secure, but I would just take that into consideration when you decide to display this figure. After that, we have the microphone, very nice gold and black matte finish. Yeah, pretty clean paint job once again. Then we have this hot pink microphone cord with an interesting design at the end. Now this microphone cord has a half peg, which I do wish that it was just a full peg. I think it just would have made it a little bit easy, but you just try and line it up and just push it in. And this is how it's supposed to look at the end for reference, if you do pick up this figure. After that, we have the microphone stand. Nothing too much to note here. Again, black and gold finish. And then the other big piece of this figure is, of course, the massive flag. Again, very nice and wild looking sculpt. You know, just kind of flows very naturally, I feel, and it's very crazy looking way. Miku's hand is attached to the other microphone pole part, so Miku's hand does move up and down that pole, which makes it a little bit easier to put in later. Again, another half peg that you have to put in. Just twist this microphone pole and then just slowly push it in, and it should, you know, fit nice and easy, even though I do kind of struggle a bit. And then we have the other end, which houses the microphone and the microphone cord as well. So yeah, that pretty much has to line up like this. I did have it wrong at one point in a failed recording, but it should just slide in like that. And then putting this in, I didn't really show it because it was a pain in the butt to do on camera. Just because it was kind of tricky because the hand kept wanting to move because again it swivels, so just showing it like that. The support pole I just plopped right in. I mean, it's a support pole, it's nothing too exciting. And then the little piece goes right here on the flag. So yes, that is the whole figure assembled. So now we're moving on to B-roll of the figure, and I really had to pull the camera all the way back just to show you the magnitude of this figure. She barely fits on the turntable, and thankfully she is balanced quite well. But Hobby Stock did a fantastic job with her in terms of the paintwork and the sculpt. Paintwork, no really defects or any very terrible looking areas, and the sculpt on her body, her outfit, the flag, all just fantastically done. So yeah, that's pretty much like the best part of the figure for me, is just the overall outcome. Yeah, even the base, I like how they did a variety in terms of like the equipment and just like the little details on there, like the knobs, the wires. It's a very nice touch. Shading is also very well done in a couple of areas, like on the jacket. And of course Miku's twin tails, fantastic sculpt and just flow. And again, I feel like just the assembly with me once again, as you guys probably know from my many reviews, it was just the hardest part because again, I'm a very careful person and I don't want to mess anything up or break anything. But yes, paint defects because I tried to take out the flag and it just, yeah, like right on the tip right here, you can see the pink, and especially on here, it was quite devastating and even like, you know, scraped into the plastic. And then we have this one, which was from when she kind of fell into my table, scraped that pigtail. And then a little bit on the flag, it's really not that noticeable, but some of Miku's hair color got on there. So yeah, that was pretty much my big freaking mishap for this figure. Not super noticeable, and I did kind of patch things up, but yeah, just be super careful when you're disassembling this figure so you don't end up getting paint defects like I did. So going into size comparisons, we have the 1/7 Digital Stars Miku next to the very tiny, very cute Maneki Miku Nendroid. Next is a 1/8 scale figure made by Stronger, which is the Hatsunemiku Harai Rogoromo figure. Very beautiful figure. Then we have a 1/7 scale, which is the Hatsunemiku Land of the Eternal figure by Good Small Company. See, I got a bunch of Miku figures to show off. But then we have this 1/6 Mo figure by Native and Rocket Boy. Unfortunately, I don't have a 1/6 Miku scale. And then after that, we have a 1/4, of course, the one I always show off, the Hatsunemiku My Dear Bunny version by Freeing. And now we're going to my overall thoughts of this figure, and I'm just absolutely blown away with the overall quality of her. The sculpt work is fantastically done in so many areas, really no noticeable seam lines, which is nice, and the paint work is pretty top notch. Again, no paint splashes or bleeding anywhere. And you know, on Miku herself and the base, there's just so many nice small details that they managed to cram onto this figure. And I'm glad that at least mine didn't really have any defects in those areas considering the massive price tag of the figure. And I feel like that this figure translated very well from that gorgeous original illustration. So now we're going on to the cons and nitpicks of this figure. Now there's going to be a bunch in this section. However, it doesn't really detract from the figure for me at least, but I thought I'd point them out in this part of the video. First, and the most obvious, is that the box for this figure is massive. If you're really pressed for space, I would probably skip picking up this figure just because it will take up a lot of storage space. And now we're going into just the main thing, for me at least, was the assembly process. Again, I'm just super careful when assembling this figure, but I don't want to spend like an hour trying to get like one piece of the figure put in. So the first thing is that this figure is a little bit wobbly, which I would be very careful about. So if you display this figure, put her in a spot that you're not going to really run into often so she doesn't possibly topple over. Again, thankfully with my copy, she's, you know, secure with those metal pegs, but I do wish that maybe the metal pegs themselves were a little bit thicker for a tighter fit, or a little bit longer maybe. Again, I don't know the whole construction of a figure and what would work better, but that's just my little observation. And the last big thing was definitely the end portion before the support rod and putting her arm with the microphone into her sleeve. The peg I felt like was maybe too thick, or again, the hole for it was like way too small. I feel like I get that they needed it as a tight fit considering the weight of the microphone, again with that massive flag. I just maybe wish it was a little bit not so tight, just because it was definitely a struggle to put in. And yes, because of how the hand swivels on the microphone pole, it was quite a pain in the butt to put into the sleeve. I'm gonna compare this to like a Nendoroid, where, you know, you take off the whole head and the peg is still attached and you try and push it back into like where it goes on the neck, and how sometimes it just wants to like push forward or push back. Like it's a pain in the butt just to get it straight in. That's pretty much like the same thing that happened, except on a scale figure. So in this case, I would maybe recommend getting a second person to help you in terms of disassembling this figure, especially with the flag. Just have one person hold Miku and the other person just slowly try and pull out the hand with the flag in it, or just be very, very careful and take your time when trying to pull the hand out of the sleeve. And yes, just thankfully nothing snapped off the figure. I think that would have been a lot worse. And, you know, just the paint transfer, that happened, and I did patch those up off screen. And now we're going into aftermarket pricing, so I feel like she stayed relatively the same in terms of retail price, maybe even a little bit less than retail. It looks like, at least on Yahoo Japan Shopping, she is going for between 350 USD and almost 450 USD. So yes, still very expensive, and again, be warned about the shipping costs if you want to pick her up from websites like that. Unfortunately, I didn't see any listings for her on Mercari JP, My Figure Collection ads, or Mandarake. I did find her, and she's still on there on Solaris for $410, and then you got that extra $100 shipping. So I guess unless you have a lot of points, then there's an option for you to pick this figure up. And then I guess since I don't have any other places where you can pick this figure up from, there's always eBay. But again, people are just selling her for like over $450, $500, and even close to $800, which is absurd. Unless you really, 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 really want this figure and you don't mind shelling out the money, there's that option. But, you know, before doing that, I would probably go ahead and contact the seller just to see if they have any, like, authentic figures, because there's just mostly stock photos of the figure. And unfortunately, she's no longer in stock on AmiAmi or even pre-owned. It took me too damn long to make this video because, again, I had to find a spot for her. I believe when she did release, there was some stock left over. So yes, a very lengthy overall thoughts section, but I do hope that this information helps if you do decide to pick up this very massive, very elaborate Miku figure in the future. So that overall concludes this video on this very massive Miku scale. I really do love how she turned out overall, and I feel like my only big thing was the assembly. It was like kind of nightmarish, especially towards the end. Again, just be careful if you do disassemble this figure in the future. Use that protective packaging. I feel like it's definitely there for a reason. Again, I'm going to try and touch up those areas. They're thankfully not at the very front of the figure, but I'll keep thinking about them and it's going to really bother me. So yeah, if you do like the figure, I highly recommend picking her up. I think she was worth it for me. Maybe get her for cheaper, because again, it's a very expensive figure. And if you did like this video and you would like to, of course, feel free to take the time to subscribe to my channel to see what other figure and merch related shenanigans I get into next. So thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or night wherever you are, and take it easy. Goodbye.